Every week we hear it on the Cup Series broadcast, the importance of pit road and how the pit crews can be the difference between winning and finishing second or worse. I really enjoyed visiting with tire changers Jeff Cordero on the number 24 and Mike Hicks of the number 20 in the past. Today's visit is with Chris Hall, a pit crew veteran and now the director of pit operations at Legacy Motor Club. We talked about Hall's history in the sport, the challenges of starting a pit crew from its infancy, and what it was like this past week losing Eric Jones and replacing him with Corey Heim, who was making his first ever Cup Series start. And yes, we talked about how Tyler Reddick yeeted the number 43 car on that early pit stop at Dover, and it comes with some great helmet cam footage. I'd like to welcome to the channel from Legacy Motor Club, Chris Hall. Hey Chris, I appreciate you joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. Discuss pit stops with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the past, I've talked with Jeff Cordero at Hendrick. I've talked with Mike Hicks at JGR. So I'm guessing you know Mike from your past, right?
I do. We have a tenure together. We started as teammates, and then when I retired from going over the wall, I was one of his coaches over there for a while. So I've got the good and bad and ugly with Mike Hicks. So no.
We've had some good conversations. So kind of just go with me and talk about your background, how long you've been in NASCAR, your involvement on a pit crew, and then obviously where you are today with Legacy. So let's go back to where you started.
Yeah, what a whirlwind it's been. This is my 20th season in NASCAR, I guess. And I grew up in Southwest Missouri and dirt late models and local short tracks, and it was really a family thing for me. So it seemed like every weekend I was at a different racetrack with my family, and my grandpa was a really a big push for what we did. And I had uncles that were close in my age, 7 and 10 years. So we were constantly gone and working on cars. And I played high school basketball, and I thought I was going to go, to a small school and play basketball and try to earn a degree. But man, I wasn't ready for that, at
Right.
that moment in my life. So I decided to leave, Southwest Missouri and make my way to Charlotte. And I really thought it was going to be as easy as, knocking on someone's door and handing them my resume and them hiring me on the spot. And I was very humbled to realize that wasn't necessarily the case. So I feel like I hit every race team, around the Charlotte area, just handing out my resume. And I feel like I did that twice. And I was starting to get discouraged when the phone rang and I got my start in 2003 with Bobby Hamilton Racing. So I ended up moving to Charlotte, 823 miles from home, and then
Wow.
having to move halfway back because they were located in Nashville, Tennessee. So
Okay.
uh, it worked out. It was a really fortunate, timing for me because it allowed me the opportunity to, work for someone like him and really learn the ins and outs and about everything that had to be done to go to the racetrack and compete. So I wasn't always just show up on Sunday and pit the car. I had to learn and hone in on all my mechanical abilities, my fabrication skills, and back then pit stops were just something you did after work. So it really it allowed me to have this appreciation for everything that goes on to make a successful race team and all the little components that go into it.
Right. So when did you, I remember reading on your resume, you were at Michael Waltrip for how long?
Yes, I was the MWR for almost 10 years. So my actual first cup start or cup team that I worked for, however, was PPI, Cal Wells's race team that he had with the 32 Tide car. So I ended up going to work there at the end of '04. I started at Michael Waltrip Racing in 2006, and I was a part of that journey until unfortunately the doors closed there, and
Right.
that's when I made the jump to JGR, where I was able to be on the '78 pit crew through an alliance agreement with Furniture Row Racing. Was able to win a championship in 2017 as an over the wall member, and now I'm blessed to have the position I have at Legacy Motor Club.
So through the years, kind of tell me, have you done pretty much everything, tire changer, all that stuff, tire carrier? What have you done through the years?
Yeah, I would say my over the wall focus, I was always a tire carrier.
Okay.
The interesting, thing about myself is up until 2013, my wife and I, we had our first kid in 2010, and she was like, "Hey, this traveling thing's a lot." I was
Right.
a road mechanic, car chief, and pit crew member. During those times.
Right.
Our second one rolls around in 2013, and she said, "Hey, yeah, something's going to change here." So um, and I didn't really know what to do. I just knew that, obviously being gone back then, 200 days a year, was no way to, raise a family
Right.
and try to do all that at home. So I honestly had a talk with Michael Waltrip, and I was like, hey, like, it's time for me to, do something different. And I'm trying to pick a direction. And he's like, well, actually, I think you would do, great at, kind of helping us run the pit department, even as an, player athlete still. So
Okay.
uh, that was a lot of fun because, I always have so much respect for Michael. He was a big part of my growing phase in my Cup career, and when that presented itself, I jumped all over it and quickly cut my days of travel,
Right.
70%, which definitely made it, better on the home front and raising kids in a family. So I've done everything that you can think of on the race car. As far as over the wall, I was a tire changer for one event back in my early days, and it was at Bristol, and I had a loose wheel. So I figured that was not the thing for me to do. So a big credit to the Jeff Corderos and Mike Hickses of the world, no doubt.
Okay. So you talked about that 2017 season working with JGR in front row. So talk to me about that year. I mean, I've talked with Jeff about it. Went in with Kyle Busch. I think it was 2019, and just the excitement of being a part of a team that wins the championship. So kind of talk to me about that 2017 season.
Just saying that, you bringing it back up, gave me chills. Just going back into that moment, it was first off, we had such a interesting year in 2016. We were able to win 4 races in 16, and our pit crew was kind of up and down, but
Right.
they allowed us to kind of stick it out and weather the storm, and it really paid dividends in 2017. That we were a team that had somewhat been together the previous year, and we really hit the ground running in 2017. So it was really, when I look back at that couple years span, and especially 2017, you talk about winning, the Southern 500, talk about winning the Coke 600, you talk about was leading at Indy when Toyota manufacturer teammates got together when Kyle Busch and Martin wrecked. Like, and it's all these events where you're like, man, pinch me, is this real?
Right.
That you just knew when you walked into the racetrack that you had to be on your game because you were going to be running up front and the spotlight was going to be on you. And that was really no different, at Homestead, the final race. Our mile-and-a-half program was so good in 2017. We just expected to show up, sit on the pole, and lead every lap. And we ran third, fourth, or fifth most of the race in 2017. I was like, "Oh, this isn't this isn't what I had dreamed up." But luckily, we were able to knock out 2 good pit stops and get some clean air and track position, and Martin was able to bring it home. So definitely a special race, a special year, and just something that is, again, one of those pinch me moments. You're like, how does this happen to a guy from middle of nowhere, Missouri? So yeah, a
Right.
lot of fun.
All right. So then this last year, I mean, you've been working with JGR up until last season, right? And then you made the move to Legacy this year, correct?
That is correct. I left JGR in September of 2023. I had a good run at JGR, but I was one to explore what other options might be out there for me, and I knew that JGR is such a well-oiled machine, and they have systems upon systems in place, and I was looking for a challenge. Like, what is this going to be? I didn't know if I was going to be in racing or if I was going to be sweeping the floors of my kid's school and trying to coach high school basketball. Like,
Right.
I just knew that it was time. My time there had kind of, passed on me a little bit, I guess, and was looking forward to a change. And just, the way things work out are amazing. Fortunately for myself, the Legacy Motor Club was looking to invest and human capital and in the pit crew department, which is right up my alley. I love pit stops. I'm a fan of pit road. It doesn't matter what
Right.
organization you're from. So to be able to come in and kind of help stand a department up, from its infancy was extremely intimidating because there's so many things that you have to take into consideration. Where we practice, what equipment we're going to use. Oh wait, we don't have anyone, on staff to field these two pit crews for next year. So it was extremely interesting to get a late start, so to speak, but it's been a lot of fun. The journey's just beginning, and to date, it's been a lot of fun.
Real quick, what was your title at JGR when you left last year?
I was the director of player advancement. So over the last couple of years, I was tasked with starting the development program at JGR, recruiting new athletes into this
Okay.
space. Able to work on some data and analytics collection, and really, try to drive the new age of pit stop forward. That's what I was able to do my last couple of years at JGR.
Okay, so then you come over to Legacy, and obviously, you're recruiting players and trying to get these athletes to come do it for JGR. Now you're doing something similar. And I think listening to Denny Hamlin on his podcast, because I've written numerous articles in the past about JGR's struggles on pit road last year and the year before, and listening to Denny talk about it with 2311 and, telling Tyler, listen, we're still a new organization. We're still getting new people. And I thought it was really enlightening when he's talking about how you don't just magically say, oh, I want to have the best of the best now. You have to go find these guys, and they're all locked in with contracts. So you're really trying to find these diamonds in the rough, I guess, and trying to put it all together. So you talked about it being intimidating. So now we're 11 races into the season. You've had some time to kind of assess where your pit crews are. Where are they based on what your expectations were coming into the 2024 season?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I feel like it's going to warrant somewhat of an explanation
Sure.
because what you just described and what you hear, and the comments that Denny has made. Like, I look at the pit crew on the 11 car this year, and in my opinion, they're probably the best on pit road,
Yeah.
and that's been a 2-year project, right? So like I can remember, bringing in half that team from someone who's never even picked up a tire or an impact before, and just watching them learn the sport and learn their craft and learn their skill. And really, they've had the ability to work together over the last couple of years, and it hasn't always been roses and palm trees for those guys.
Yeah.
So it's definitely something where you look at chemistry versus athleticism, and being able to really buy yourself the time to be able to create that dynamic that is as good as what the 11 car has started the 2024 season with. So from a legacy motor club standpoint, 11 races in, um, I'm pleased with what we were able to do, to start something new, to be where we are to this point. I would say our big focus was, and I've talked to Joey Cohen and Cal Wells and like ownership group. We talked about this all winter long. Is I want to stand a pit department up that we're proud of.
Mhm.
That those are our guys, and we do things the right way. And, we want good individuals to have a team first approach. Like all these little things that can sometimes get overlooked by
Yeah.
the stopwatch, so to speak. So, from a competition goal, if you will, I feel like we can compete or run inside the top, 15 to 20 pit crews on pit road, and I would say right as we are right here, we can do that. According to the data and analytics that we use in our post race reporting. The 42 car was, 12th for the day on pit stops at Dover, and the 43 was 15th. So that puts us right in our wheelhouse. We don't accomplish that every week, but we try not to veer too far off that path, and really just set a steady expectation that allows our athletes to kind of gel and come into their own.
You know, when I look at pit road now and understanding the nuance of pit road, specifically talking to like Jeff Cordero and Mike. Um, but now looking at it in the last 2 years and 11 races now, and to me, it looks like it's just so much value is put on pit stops, and track position is so key with this new car. So do you, as someone who's been in this sport for years on pit road, do you feel the intensity and the pressure ratchet up now that we're in the next gen car or Gen 7 car? Because so much priority is put on pit stops. And we've seen it time and time again in these races where, I mean, just this last weekend at Dover, that last money stop is so critical to the success of a team. And a lot of times that's, you hear it said more often than not lately, that the race was won on pit road. So do you feel that pressure for someone? I mean, is it more intense, I guess is the question, because you've seen it transform through the years. So is it more intense these days?
100%. And the pressure is privilege, right? We are
Right.
in a position now where the next gen car is the great equalizer. Anyone can grab this car and go win, which is not true. But you still have great men and women at these race teams who work their skill and their craft to make fast race cars. So I say that lightly, but
Right.
if the car is built to be this equalizer of competition, there's really only one way you can win, and that's with the people, right? That's the
Right.
people that assemble the vehicles. That's the people that you take and prepare them to race, and the limited practice set that you get. You want uh, the the best mechanics who can make the quickest adjustments, and your best engineers who can diagnose how quick things are happening in real time, because you have such a small turnaround to either hit or miss.
Mhm.
Now, from my standpoint, we have an entire race to be a difference maker, good or bad, right?
Right.
So, we've seen, I'm not going to call anybody out, but we've seen a car at Dover run up front all day long, and their last pit stop cost them the chance at winning the race. So,
Right.
you hate it for those guys, but at the same time, I think for so long, pit road has wanted this pressure. We've wanted to let everyone know, like, hey, we're over here, we exist. Like, I understand you see the car on the track and the driver and the crew chief calling the shots, but the reality is you talk about that pressure, and it's not just pressure to do a fast pit stop so we win the
Right.
race. It's really the pressure of the men and women, at Legacy Motor Club who have put this together, who has, gotten it to the racetrack, who's prepared it for that day, all of our partners and our sponsors. And when it comes down to that last stop, these athletes today have the weight of the world on their shoulders because they're the outward facing representation of our company. And we love that, right? We
Right.
thrive on that ability and that pressure. And you know, ultimately, we're a big boy sport. You got to play. You got to play the part. You got to execute
Right.
at a high level, and if you don't, it's competition at the end of the day. So it's very important to find, strong-minded people who don't cave under pressure and accepts the responsibility to, be the face, the finished product that the race fans get to see of what we're able to put out on the racetrack.
Right. And I've heard people talk about it in the past, and I think it's really interesting that it is like football, right? You have offense, defense, and special teams. And if one phase of the game is not performing well, it could cost your team a win. It's the same thing with NASCAR. Crew chief, driver, pit crew. One of those things is off, something could go wrong and cost you a win, as you mentioned last week at Dover. I kind of want to go into like the processes that you guys do. So how much time do you practice a week or hourly, weekly, with just pit drivers and with the actual driver of the car? I'm just curious what that looks like.
Yeah, from our standpoint, we typically have someone who drives our pit vehicle. So we share facilities with 2311. We have a designated development guy who his day to day, when he's not learning how to change tires, is drive our pit practice car, and
Okay.
that is a way for all five teams that practice there to get a fair look, and build a way to build consistency, based off of how he starts and stops and drives in and all that good jazz. So, as far as drivers coming in and participating with us, I would say, um, from our standpoint at Legacy, that probably happens more of a film review or a meeting session or,
Okay.
text messages, just because, when you're fighting, for simulator time or appearances or, this or that. A funny story is like, I expected Jimmy was going to come in and drive, practice for us today. And, he had to call me last night. I was like, oh my goodness, I completely overlooked. I had this obligation here. And it's like that all the time. It's insane. I was talking to my wife last week, and I just had like a weekly list of what the drivers and stuff had to go through, and I was like, man, if everyone realized it's not just, hey, I'm gonna drive the car and then I'll see you next week. They are on such a schedule, and they have such a support team around them that keeps them on track and on task. It's really difficult at times to coordinate. This specific time for you to come in, but we do try to get together at least every couple weeks. And when time allows, drivers will pop in and get in the vehicle and drive for us. And then of course, our situation the last couple weeks has been a little different, and with Corey jumping into 43, and he's been a sponge. He's made it a priority to get down there and learn how to stop in the next gen car.
So I want to get into Corey here in a second. Before we get to that, I want to talk about Eric. And so um, he gets injured in that crash at Talladega. And so what do you think when you hear the news that he's out? So you have to immediately go, all right, we're going to have a different driver. You know who it is. So what is the processes for you as far as what is the next move going forward now that you don't just have a driver that's, a different driver, you have someone who's never started a cup race. So what is that like for you knowing, all right, we've got an uphill climb, but let's take on the challenge. So what was that like for you when that happened?
Yeah, get him in here as fast as you possibly can, and let us sink our teeth into him. So,
Right.
and it's such a man. What happened with Eric is very unfortunate, and we miss him dearly, and we're thankful it wasn't worse than it was. And there's a flood of emotions that come on with it, and
Right.
you got your pit crew group chat blowing up, like and it's all these little things. But Monday rolls around, and like you said, it's time to prepare. It's time to go to work. So we got Corey to the shop as quick as we could, and honestly, there are things that Eric does getting into the pit box that our guys on the 43 pit crew, they love what he does. So
Okay.
it was very much pulling film from the last however many races it is, and just saying like, hey, we really like how Eric does this. We really like the decel here, not holding us close to the wall here. All these little nuances that
Sure.
if you're just looking at it and you're like, oh, car just came in, the car left. There's 150 details that go into, what just made that pit stop fast. And we really took a, opportunity to grab Corey early on and be like, hey, this stuff's really important, and this is why. So we were able to show him, film, the data associated with the film, and of course, being a young thug like Corey is, he's a sponge. He's trying to absorb all that information that he can, and we definitely had a learning curve at Dover. We got hit by the 45 and got spun out on the first stop, and then we went a little long and blew through the box on the second stop, and we were deep in the box all day long, but we progressively got better and better and better and better. So again, just being able to debrief with him after the race, look for ways we could have improved and things we did well. It's just a constant learning curve in today's day and age, for sure.
Yeah. You talked about going over and reviewing it with Corey, and I was listening to another podcast that you did recently, and you talked about Wednesday as like review day. So I'm assuming that was yesterday for you guys. What kind of give me an idea of what you talk about with Corey? But before we get to that, I have to ask, did you watch the broadcast and hear how Kevin Harvick described what happened with Tyler and Corey? Did you hear that?
I did not hear that. So
I don't know if you're in on Kevin Harvick's, he does this word of the week and he uses some crazy word that he gets given on his podcast. And it was yeeted this week. So he said Tyler Reddick yeeted Corey Heim on that pit stop, and everybody, William Byron posted about it on Twitter. It was real funny. But so I was going to say to you, but I wanted to have context. So when Corey got yeeted by Tyler,
Yeah.
talk to me about that stop and the subsequent one where you talked about you went a little bit long, because I know in talking with Jeff and Mike that, I mean, I've had some really fascinating conversations with them about when someone's going long or they're not going to stop, the most important thing is to get off your feet, which sounds counterintuitive, but you don't want to get run over. So jumping. So I have to think these guys are going over that wall going, this is the kid's first time in real competition. I have to be prepared for anything. And then you have him getting yeeted by Tyler Reddick. So what's going on in your mind and the pit crew when that first stop's coming and then all those things transpire? How do you process it? And what are you guys talking about when it happens? And then obviously talking about it yesterday in your review.
Yeah, when it happened, I thought, well, it can only go up from here. So that's the first thing I thought of. And more importantly, I was nervous that maybe Corey was going to be, timid the rest of the day, or really look out for the 45. But Joey Cohn was on top of the pit box there at Dover, and he was able to, say, hey, keep your focus. Pit road is a game of give and take, and you didn't do anything wrong there, and the two teams have to work together. So really, after that point, I was thankful that Corey didn't dwell on it. He kind of had, as Ted Lasso would say, he was like a goldfish. He forgot fairly quick, but
Yeah.
then the very next stop, he comes in and he thinks he does a good job hitting his sign, and he blows to the box, 6 feet too long. So and that's just I feel for him, going from a truck to an Xfinity car and then hopping in a next gen car where the tires are wider and the brakes are better. And there's just a whole lot going on for him. But,
Right.
really during the race, we're just trying to say, uh, take a little bit off here and focus on hitting your sign, and fortunately, we would rather have it that way. Like,
Right.
bring it to us hot as
Sure.
opposed to creep in and roll, creep in and roll, creep in and roll, because that's a momentum killer all day long. So
Right.
uh, when I look at the 43 team and they're able to average a 9.7 second day on pit road, I would say Corey did pretty well for his first go at it, because we were still able to do our job inside the pit box. So when in film review, we honestly didn't even go over stop one. When he got spun in there,
Right.
I did download the helmet cam and send it to him on his phone and said, I only thought it was fitting that you should have your first ever Cup pit stop. And so that was good. Hopefully, we got a good laugh out of that. But really, the rest of the day was just describing ways that he can help our approach. That's the biggest thing. We are such a pit stops are a momentum thing. They're a choreographed dance, and if one thing gets off the mark, then it's really difficult to overcome. Or then you're just fighting the rest of the 10-second pit stops, not trying to compound your mistake. So really, just getting in there, getting smooth. Little nuances that we were talking through about how he can, hold it off the wall a little bit longer and come down to us a little smoother. Just little silly things like that. And
Right.
man, like I said, he picked up on it all pretty quick and was able to get in the practice car and basically do on demand what we had talked about in the film. So definitely a big learning week for us as a team, and that's uh, Corey being ready just in case. He's back in and going this week, so it was good for everybody there.
Well, I mean, it's fascinating to hear you talk about it. I really, that's when I talked to JP, that's really what I wanted to talk about was kind of the differences, and you've explained it really well. I really appreciate your time. And as I mentioned with JP, I'd really like to do this more in the future, because I feel like it's so important talking to pit crews and different pit crews and getting different ideas and strategies of how they approach it. So I really hope that we can have you back on in the future. I appreciate it, Chris, you joining me and sharing kind of your insight on what's been going on since you joined Legacy and what happened this past week. And I wish you the best of luck here in the future.
Awesome, thank you so much. I appreciate your time as well, and we'll come back anytime you'll have us.
All right. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it, buddy.